how woke Gen Zs obsess over slavery that took place over 2 centuries ago, while completely dismissing the plight of 50 million modern-day slaves who are begging for your help. It's been a while since I've shot a video responding to a comment from one of you guys, but this one was so good I couldn't pass up the opportunity. But before I read to you the comment, let me give you a bit of background. So the video that the person was commenting on was about a 12-year-old British schoolgirl who got sent home from school on their school culture day. And this girl turned up to school wearing a Union Jack dress. The school told the girl that culture day wasn't for her because she gets to celebrate her British culture every day. So they called her dad to take her home in her Union Jack sequin Spice Girls dress. So you can watch that video here on my channel. It's the one I posted just before this one. But on to the comment. So Aman Bish, I think that's pronounced, says, what is she supporting? Looting, crime and slavery and famine? So what Aman is suggesting is that her British flag is a symbol of looting, crime, slavery and famine. Yes, colonialism happened, we all know that. But Brits today do not support slavery. I don't know about you, but I have never met a British person who's ever said, gee, I really miss slavery. Why did we have to abolish slavery? What a stupid thing to do. Have you ever met anyone like that? I've also never met any British slave owners. I don't even know any British people who have servants. And I grew up with servants. I know the word servant sounds awful nowadays, doesn't it? Because we have all these like modern euphemisms like maids and housekeepers and all that, but we called them 工人, servant, because they served us. But if you could afford it, anyone who could afford servants had them in Hong Kong back in the day. And the only other person I ever met who had servants wasn't British or white. It was back in the day when I was going to school in Canada, in Vancouver, back in the 80s. And there was one boy in my school, the only African kid in my whole school. And his name was Abdi. He had servants too. In fact, Abdi used to moan all the time about how back at home he lived like a prince. But here in Vancouver, Canada, they had these shitty little houses with no land. Yeah, so me and Abdi, a couple of ethnic immigrants in a mostly white school, were the only ones who'd ever had any servants. I'm pretty sure some of the other Hong Kong kids who I didn't know also had servants. But that was the closest I ever met to anybody who enjoyed the benefits of slavery. But I digress. So back to your comment that the British flag represents looting, crime, slavery and famine. I think I need to give you a history lesson because you seem to have missed out on a couple of centuries of history. Have you ever heard of Britain's Slavery Abolition Act of 1833 that was created to end slavery overseas? Achieving this ended up costing the UK £20 million back in 1833, mind you. So at the time, £20 million was equivalent to about 40% of Britain's GDP. And we UK taxpayers had to pay for that. And it took us until quite recently, 2015, to finish paying for it. So we Brits had to work from 1833 to 2015 to pay off that bill to free the slaves around the world. Did you know that? And you got to bear in mind, when this act was passed, there were ships transporting slaves across the Atlantic, which the UK had to stop. So the Royal Navy's West Africa Squadron launched an operation from 1807 until about 1860 in order to do this. And 2,000 British soldiers lost their lives. 2,000 young British men sacrificed their lives to free foreign slaves. The squadron freed about 150,000 slaves from over 1,600 ships. So when you ignorantly reduce the flying of the British flag as a celebration of slavery, the truth is actually the opposite. It's a celebration of the heroic deeds of young men like these squadron members who sacrificed their lives to end slavery overseas. But sadly, the fight against slavery is far from over. In fact, it's the opposite. Slavery is at its all-time peak today. I bet you didn't know that, did you? Over 50 million people globally are living in modern slavery. 12 million victims of slavery are in sub-Saharan Africa, including close to 4 million children who are being trafficked and exploited. So I find it odd, more than odd, infuriating, how woke Gen Zs obsess over slavery that took place over 2 centuries ago, while completely dismissing the plight of 50 million modern-day slaves who are begging for your help. If you want to do something about slavery, stop whinging about the past. Educate yourself on modern slavery and do something. So until then, to the person who made this comment, I'm afraid you are the problem. Yeah, you're diverting attention away from modern-day slavery, thereby keeping close to 4 million black children suffering in silence. Where is BLM? Where are you with your placard? The modern-day slave owners are laughing. They're laughing at how easily manipulated you are. They need people like you to point the other way, to focus everybody's attention on white people on the basis of the color of their skin, people who had nothing to do with slavery, so that nobody looks at them and they can continue getting away with it today. So if anybody out there watching this video is tired of having people accuse them of being responsible for slavery or not doing their part to pay reparations, remember, we just finished paying in 2015, all of us British taxpayers. And send them this video. And if they refuse to watch it, then they don't really care. Their concern for slaves and for black people is just empty virtue signaling. It's just theatre. And it's long outdated theatre, because that show closed already a long time ago.